All right, James,
All
welcome
right.
to the Nova University podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself to the people that are listening to this right now?
Sure. Hey, my name is James Clark, uh, veteran, a real estate investor, air traffic controller by trade. Um, just got engaged last December, my fiance, and we're excited for this wedding planning. So just excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, congratulations on getting married.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
and I see you have a BP shirt as well.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when I guess a lot of people want to know is like before we ask all the questions, like, how did you? I guess you know what? We'll start from the beginning though. From the beginning, like, were you always like given things in your life? Like, did your parents teach you about finances and all that stuff? Like at a young kid, were you like, hey, I gotta hit real estate real hard? Like, what was your thought process?
No, not at all. I think the one thing I picked up from my parents was work ethic. I saw my dad at from a young age to even now, go to college. He had a full time job and he was a pastor. So you can imagine um, just how hard it was to kind of accomplish those goals and even still have a work life balance. He was definitely always in our lives. My mom, she always had jobs and she was doing antiques on the side, or she kind of do her own wholesaling with jewelry, or there was always like kind of a side hustle or business acumen that I learned. But as far as the details of finance, I just learned very broad general rules. So in adulthood, I kind of had to figure it out through reading and through those experiences. You know how that goes. That's usually the hard ones to teach you the best lessons. So
Yeah, and you're a guy that's kind of older, or you're an older generation. You're 40 plus, and that's good for you. You don't even look 40, by the way. I mentioned
thank you.
before, like you look like you're in your 30s. But a lot of people want to know is like, what was your thought process at the age of 18? Because that's where a lot of the people that are listening to this podcast, they're either starting out or they are like restarting their whole. They're like, hey, I need to start over or do whatever. Or I'm starting right now. Like, what was your thought process? You're welcome to the adult world. What did you do right away?
So at 18, I can say that I was just trying to figure out life. I was your average 18-year-old. I had no idea or thought about real estate. Veteran, so right after high school, like literally a week and a half later, I was in basic training. So it was army, then air traffic control school, traveling, just making friends, trying to figure out myself, trying to make a career out of it. And yeah, no thought of real estate. For those who are starting out at a young age, I would say network. Um, get yourself around people who are successful in real estate. Have those conversations. Get in those rooms and read. That's one thing I did not do. You know, at around 18, 19, early 20s. Um, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, right? That's one thing. I wish I would have read that book when I was 18 years old, because it would have opened my eyes. Because everybody in my upbringing was kind of like the poor dad, get yourself a good career, work until you're 65, and then enjoy life, But once I read that book, I was like, man, I don't have to wait that long. I can do things right now to set myself up for success and freedom, financial freedom, and the freedom to do things I want to do at a much younger age. So just know that you can do that. And you just have to take the right steps, meet the right people, and read the right books, and then take the action, right? To finish it off.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'll give you that when I was 16, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that kind of
Mm-hmm.
opened my mind. I was like, holy. So now that you're saying that, like at your late age that you read that, you're like, oh man, I wish that I could have read. I'm telling you, like it does impact you. That book itself, a lot of people call
It
it the
does.
purple book, where like, hey,
Yeah.
if you haven't read all the purple books, like get to it, right?
Right.
And
And there's so many. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, you go ahead, go. What are you about to say?
There's just so many more books to piggyback off that one, that would have changed my mindset or changed the way I look at life, as far as, growing financially, increasing my net worth, and providing that lifestyle that I wanted. Like, you always look at the end result, But if you only have a certain view of how you're going to get there, if you don't expand that view anymore through reading or through talking to other people, it kind of seems impossible. You have limiting belief, or you just think, oh man, I have to win the lottery like everybody else. But that's not true. Like, you have the lottery an opportunity if you can create it and if you can network and find the right people, and through hard work and persistence, it can happen. It's going to take that hard work and persistence, but it can definitely happen.
Oh yeah. And I kind of want to know, like, what gave you that mindset shift to actually become an entrepreneur and do all this? Like, what was that big? Because everyone has that, like, that eureka moment. What was yours?
Right. So mine was a rock and a hard place, and I think that's where it starts with a lot of people. Mine wasn't the greatest, desperate situation, but of course, I'm an air traffic controller, and I absolutely love my job. But the name of the game is to go go to a place, get certified, get seasoned, and then you have to move to another airport to grow in this career. So, like, I'm at Fayetteville Airport right now. To grow, I'd have to go to like a Raleigh or a Charlotte. And because of certain reasons, I could not move, and I was kind of getting mad about it. Because I felt that season, I had taken all the right steps. I had volunteered, I had done all the extra work, right? So I was just stuck, and I was getting really bitter about it. I'm a man of faith, so I was going to church, and the pastor for like weeks was just preaching action, 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 take action. So I was like, what other vehicle can I use to take action? And I saw a Bigger Pockets podcast. It was Beardy Brandon on Wednesdays, and I was like, let me just tune in and see what he has to say. And literally, like, for the next 3 or 4 weeks, I was just listening, because I'm a guy. It takes me like 5 times to get something. Some people are quick learners. I'm a very slow learner, but I know that, so I take the necessary steps, right? So by like the third time, I was like, okay, let me look at this small real estate business we have. Um, and from then on, it just kind of like, we have a head start because we already had a few properties. So let's see what it takes to first get our business correct and get it running efficiently, and then let's see what it needs to scale. And that was in 2020. So we've been moving forward ever since. But it was a lot of mindset shift, because before that, we were kind of running it mom and pop style. We were the people that people would call to be like, hey, do you want to sell your house? And they would be like, hoping that we would sell. So there was a huge mind shift in the way we run our business, the approach to scaling, the whole 9 yards.
Nice. Like that mindset shift, especially like, and you're doing it at such in 2020, right? A lot of people do it
Right.
because a lot of people, they look into you or they look into everybody. It's like, oh man, they probably started early or whatever. But you're literally, you started in your 30s, correct? And
Yeah. Yeah.
and you did it in 2020 where COVID and everything was happening. So at that point, anybody can actually do it. It's like, it's not like, oh, you have to be a super young person or you have to wait at the like a correct time, make sure you're comfortable. Like, you're never gonna get comfortable at that point. Uh, and you at 18, right? You had the choices of either going to college, join the military, or getting a trade, right? A lot of people, they're like, oh man, I need to, before I even invest, right? I need to get my bread up. I need to do something. I need to get smart. And you recommended books as well. What's your point of view on the military, college, and trades in general?
Um, every person's different, so every person has their options, right? I would say whichever route you go, keep your debt low, and that's a very tough thing to do. But in this age of information, there's and networking, there's so many ways to do that, and so many niches you can find. You can do it. So don't go out there and buy a brand new car. The military thing. That's what I avoided. Luckily, because I had a dad who told me, don't go out and buy a new car and have like a $500 a month payment and give all this money away. I bought like a used 5 year old Isuzu, um, and I paid it off as fast as I could. And that's when I learned, like, the second I paid it off, I was like, I don't have a car payment next month. This is amazing. So, like, those little things like that, just keep your debt low, maintain a humble living. If you can house hack, the thing I didn't know, or be the person who rents the room, and makes that sacrifice to save more money if you're not in a position to buy a house yet. Like I have a coworker who moved down from another facility, and he was like, "Hey, I'm kind of in a rough situation right now. You know, does anybody have a suggestion for a place I could stay?" Sure, I have a room available. Is it a sacrifice? Yes, but I know that I can take that money, apply it towards my mortgage, pay that down faster, or save it over time. If I can do a little bit of that too, and if there's a venture I want to do, I can go do it eventually. So leave yourself enough money. Number one, for emergencies, because they do happen and they will happen, and then enough money to invest. And if you focus, you can do it in a short amount of time. It just takes sacrifice. So the question always is, how much do you want to sacrifice?
Nice. And towards your I guess like your real estate endeavors, what kind of niche are you focusing towards? Are you focusing towards short term, long term, multifamily? What is your like criteria?
So for me, uh, my mentor is Henry Washington. So I'm in one of his groups. And he's like, get the deal first and figure out what you're going to do with it. So I've always taken that approach because I've gotten a lot of deals, and I'm like, this could be a flip, or maybe this is better as a buy and hold. But mainly, we've done a flip. We're about to do a hotel with a property we have under contract, and then we have a couple of buy and holds, and those have come through various avenues as far as the buy and holds.
Nice. And for those that are like starting out and they're like, "Oh, I heard of this thing called wholesaling, right? But I don't know how to get leads or something like how to find somebody that actually wants me to sell their house or whatever." What are some advice or tips that you would recommend for them?
So the general rule of thumb is going to be time or money, right? So understand going into it that you're going to have to put a lot of time in, or a lot of money in. When I first started out, I did not have a ton of money, and like I said, we were kind of running our business backwards. So it was kind of like I don't really want to mess with those funds because those are the emergency funds, right? So I was doing literally the cold calling, and I had the multi-dollar. Let me back up a little bit. Let me back up. So first of all, for wholesaling, the first thing you need is someone who needs help with something. It could be maybe they're in a divorce situation, maybe they're a tired landlord, um, maybe they have a vacant house that's in distress, something like that. And you need to find that person so you can help them out with their situation. Um, this wasn't a wholesaler, could have been, but uh, my story for this one is we found a lady who had a son living in her mobile home on a piece of property. This wasn't like a mobile home park mobile home, and he had wrecked the place. And she was so tired of paying taxes on it. And we found out that the neighbors were still in electricity. So she was probably getting calls from the electric company, about a bill. So when I met her, she was like, I just want to get rid of this property. And I was like, well, how much do you want for it? And she said a good price. We didn't even have to negotiate. I was like, okay, that's fine. Um, so we went to see the property. We walked it. And that's when we found out that the neighbors were stealing the electricity. She asked me to leave. And I was like, no, I'll stay with you until the cops come. Well, that turned into a whole fiasco. Um, the next door neighbors were pretty hostile. They were like yelling at the cops. And of course, she was scared because if you're going to yell at the police, what are they going to do to me if there's a problem? So after that, she was just like, thank you so much for staying. Like, I've been talking to other people, they want to buy this property, but you've been the nicest. So um, developing a relationship after you find that lead is, crucial. So develop the relationship. We closed on the property, all cash, and then we decided to renovate this. If you wanted to wholesale, for those who don't know, all you do is put that property under contract. You'd have verbiage in the contract, which I recommend talking to a lawyer about because they need to know your local state laws, and they change, especially in this climate. So talk to a lawyer, go to a real estate event, meet a lawyer there, have an attorney at least look over it to make sure you're legit. And then you have one closing with that seller who's selling you the property. And then you have a cash buyer come in. And after you close on that property, you go sell that property to a cash buyer. You sell the contract, excuse me. You sell that contract to a cash buyer. It is illegal to sell a property if you don't have a license, but you can sell a contract. So that's the whole gist of wholesaling.
Nice. And is there any mistakes that you've made, like that you can think of in your ventures of real estate?
Um, I would say since I do work a 9 to 5 and it's quite hectic, delegating was the first major lesson I learned because I was trying to do everything by myself, from accounting to bookkeeping to cold calling to driving for dollars. I was doing it all and I was running myself very, very thin. One thing I learned is we all have a size of, size plate. And once that plate gets full and it starts overflowing, you cannot do anything 100%. You're not even close to it. And the more, you pile on top, the less you can give to a task or a certain number of tasks. So just know where your plate is, find that out. And if you can't do something or you don't like doing something, find a way to delegate it. Find a way to get somebody who knows what they're doing or likes to do that to help you out.
I like that you try to find the who and not like the how.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, who is on your team, and like what do you have them doing? Do you have like a marketer? Do you have like a salesperson? Like who do you have?
So right now, I have a partner who is my dad, that's interesting. Everybody's like, "Oh wow, you guys are partners and you're not fighting." I'm like, "Yeah, we're partners," and we have a great relationship. Um, we've learned to separate business and family, and that's a tough thing to do. Not everybody can do it, but we do that pretty well. I have an accountant who takes care of my bookkeeping, files my taxes, does the whole 9 yards. I have a team of lawyers. Most of our properties are in South Carolina, so we have 2 lawyers, and they do all things real estate for us. We have a group of contractors also. We can call them, and we have a property manager if we need him, and we also have it's slipping my mind, property management also. So we used to try to do all that, but we don't do all that anymore. And I have a cold call company also that makes the cold calls, and they kind of do acquisitions. They just call the person, make the deal, and then they send it to me to kind of finish it off. So that's all I have going on right now.
Nice. And if you were to kind of like do it again, would you have everyone in place? Like, would you get the cold call people right away? Spend that money to get those people in place first, or would you just do what you did before and like do it yourself for a little bit and then start slowly putting in people? What would you done differently?
I would probably do it the same way, just sooner. Um, when we flipped the mobile home, that gave us a sizable amount of cash. And because I have a 9 to 5, um, my dad's retired, we put all that money right back into the business. So that relieves a lot of stress, because you don't have to worry about, does this have, do I have to keep the light bills on with this payment or anything like that? We literally just turn all the money into the business, back into the business, so it can grow as fast as possible.
Nice. And for someone that's like, I guess not very cash heavy or not very yeah, pretty much cash heavy. A lot of people are like, hey, I don't have the money. I don't know if I can get into real estate. What would you recommend for someone, whether they're young, they don't have that much money, let's say they're in like their 20s, they don't have that much money,
Mhm.
they're kind of learning the game as well, uh, and they don't really have like a six-figure job or whatever, right? They're still starting out, they're still trying to acquire those skills. What would you recommend for them?
Um, so I don't have that much experience. When I started out, um, it was 2010. Um, the market was still kind of skittish, like it was just starting to grow. It was a fourplex for sale for auction in South Carolina, and I just go ahead and tell you, we paid 11 grand for it. So that's not going to happen probably again. Um, there was a lot more property for sale, by the way, and we had a limiting belief that we could only afford this property, and the knowledge wasn't there. But literally, this landlord like passed away, and I don't know, he probably had a portfolio of 100 units, and they were selling for like at the top 60 to the bottom $8,000, for like homes and duplexes. I had people around me, a couple of people, you need to buy it all, you need to buy it all. We were like, we don't have any money, we don't know what to do. So I guess looking back on that, I would say start small. We bought what we knew we could afford, what we could handle. Um, that ended up being a great deal. So look at what you can do. If you can't do anything, then I say start reading books, start networking. I was just at Paints and Properties yesterday. Go to your local network events, talk to people, see where you can help. There's always bring value to the table. It could be anything. How can I literally ask the question, how can I bring value to you? And they might need something. You never know. Get the experience or get the networking down, read the books, and then see where you can go. And then once you make a little money, reinvest it in your company. Obviously, be financially sound about it. Don't go blow all the money. Definitely save money for taxes. If you're new, talk to a tax advisor or a tax accountant or a tax advisor. Know what you're going to have to pay at the end of the year, and then go from there. But yeah, we took the money and we decided from day one we're not spending any money or paying ourselves. We're just going to keep flipping it over into the company until we get where we want to go, and that's paid off greatly.
Nice. And you're in Fayetteville, which is like, I guess I would say it's the home of like a bunch of investors or whatever.
Right.
Everyone's just like coming off like from Bragg being like, hey, I'm going to be an investor or whatever. And they meet like all the people. And I kind of want to know, like, how do you deal with not so, this kind of like me, weird to say, but it's like competition, right? Because there's a lot of like wholesalers, there's a lot of people that are, big players in the game. What do you do
Yeah.
differently that's kind of keep you not sinking, I guess?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, most of my properties are in South Carolina. That's where I started. I only have one rental here in North Carolina, and I bought that through a VA loan. Um, the competition is monstrous here. I'm not gonna lie. There are a lot of investors. Um, they're yeah, and it's tough. Fayetteville's a tough market, but again, you have a lot of networking potential. That is the plus. You know, you just have to get in the room and have enough conversations with the right people and get yourself well educated enough that you know your markets and everything like that. I haven't had to really put the effort in here. I just be honest with you because so much is going on back in South Carolina. So that might be another avenue. Maybe you're like, man, it's tough around here. There's these juggernauts around here, sending mail and cold calling and wrapping deals up left and right. And, there's people from different countries investing here. There's people from Hawaii investing here. You might need to go to another market. There's tons of markets within an hour and a half drive. My journey just started in South Carolina. That's where my family was from. And I just keep growing down there. So that's where my time and energy goes because that's where everything keeps happening. Like it's literally last month we put a mobile home under contract. This is the one that we're probably going to hotel and a mobile home park. So, if I tried to do that here in Fayetteville, I would not have the team I have there. And there's a story about my mom and how she's like my plug. Like she's done more for me than cold callers and a lot of us. She just brings me deals like all the time. So it's a pretty interesting story.
Yeah, that's awesome that you have your whole family kind of helping you out and like working with
Yeah.
you as a partner. And one more thing, I hate that word hotel. Like that is
I
that is
know.
my like I'm like, so you're purchasing the property and you're selling it later. Isn't that just selling it? I don't know. That is my thing. I
I
know
know.
Naveed yesterday he was speaking about. I'm like, oh man, I hate that. It's like wholesaling kind of. Like, you're just not. I get it. I get it, but I just don't like it. It just
I
sounds a
don't
little
either.
weird to me.
Yeah, they need to come up with a new term for
They
sure.
do, they do. And for you going through like your whole wholesale process, like what is the future looking like for you? Like what is your vision, I guess? You're getting married, you're probably gonna have
Right.
kids. You're probably gonna do like all sorts of things, vacation time, whatever, honeymoon, and like you have your real estate going on. Like, what is your plan for your own future?
So, my big thing is this job is I love this job, but it's very demanding. Um, I get to retire at 50. That's a good thing for the job. But if it comes down to it, I don't want to depend on this job if it starts to like drive a wedge between the priorities of family and job. And this job can do it. Like one of the first things, people say when they mention air traffic is, or when I mention air traffic is, oh, it's one of the most stressful jobs, and it does have its stressors. And one of the worst things, I guess, are cons is scheduling. It's absolutely ridiculous schedule, you know. And when I have, you know, wife here shortly, kids, I don't want to sacrifice the time because I'm tired or because of overtime or anything like that. And I also get to see, I'm up in the tower, I can get to look down and I see the guys flying the private jets, and the guys, picking up their family, taking them to Disney. I get to see these things kind of on a regular basis. So that gives me motivation to say, you know, that would be nice to do that one day, you know, or to travel anywhere in the world and just be like, I'm not worried about a thing right now. So those are kind of the things that keep me motivated. And that's why I want to do what I want to do, just to have that option. Again, I love what I do. But family comes first.
Nice. Yeah, I kind of I'm in that point of view as well. Like whenever you see those private jets or whatever, me and my bakery, like when I used to, I think when I was like 15 or 16, when I was working at a bakery, the owner he would get his Lamborghini, parked there. I'm like, yo, I want that, right? And
Right.
he was a total dickhead to me. And he was like, the quote that I always get in my head is like, hey, if you keep working hard enough and you keep at it, come here, clock in and out, you can probably get me another Lamborghini. And that's what
Right.
that is what's like. It went through my. I heard it before, and it just went through my head. Like every time I would work there, I'm like, man, I want to know what he's doing, right?
Mhm.
And later on, I became more mature and whatever. Uh, as I'm getting older, and I'm like, okay, I gotta meet with these people. So I would go ahead and meet with like the giant, the gym guys are around, like the owners. I'm like, hey, can you tell me what you've done and what are some of the mistakes that you've done so that I don't have to do it, right? Learn from the
Mhm.
giants, instead of reinventing the wheel. And I'm writing it down. And they like that, that I'm doing that, so they recommend me for other people. And I swear, I called. This happened like 2 weeks ago. You probably saw the Facebook, or like 3 weeks ago. You probably saw the Facebook post where like I called the gym guy. He's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. If you want to open up a gym, I'll give you all the contacts. I'm like, all right.
I
And
did.
one of them calls me. His name is Tony. Calls me. He's like, yo, come by my gym. I'm like, dude, I don't even know you, right? He's
Mhm.
like, you never heard of my gym? It's the biggest one in the world. I'm like, nah, you're just a capper. I don't know if you're telling the truth. I don't even know who you are. He's like, you never seen me on TikTok? I'm like, no, I've never seen you on TikTok, man. I don't know who you are. He's like, you know what? Come by my place. I go by his gym, and you seen the photos, like the biggest gym I ever seen. Lamborghini
Yeah.
parked right inside. I'm like, holy. So this is what the
Mhm.
power of networking gets you. You just start meeting these different people. You grab and you get their phone numbers. Sooner or later, I'll get like Donald Trump or someone like Bill Gates' phone number in my phone and be like, "Hey, I need your help." Like, can I get
Right.
some advice? And that's what I still do right now with all the big players that I know. And I always ask them this question: is like, "Hey, what is your principle and like what are some of the principles that you learned in business?" So with you, James, like what are some of your like favorite business principles that you've learned over time, or whether with other people or just from your own experience?
So mine are going to be really, and I guess when you talk to most business owners, they're probably really some. Number one, be transparent and be honest, right? Like if you could say you're gonna be somewhere, be there. Like if say you're gonna do something, do it. Even if it hurts, if it's like a mistake, if you're gonna lose money on a deal, it happens. Like people don't talk about it. Be honest, keep your word. That's like one of the most bare bones, simple things you can do. You know, let people know. Don't keep secrets. That's it. That's part of the one of the most difficult things is I've seen people start, you know, off hot, and then they just kind of trickle away, you know. And sometimes that happens. Life happens, but you know, pick it up. Like go back, regroup, attack. You know what I'm saying? Like it's gonna be a crazy game. It's gonna be a lot. There's been a lot of experiences, a lot of emotions, but be honest about it. Like tell people where you are, tell people what you want to do when you're networking. Like you said, you just went in there and asked the guy, and look what happened. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, man, just especially with a partner, like um, my dad and I have to be transparent and like completely honest. And sometimes it's, you know, you have to be partners. So he has to tell me some stuff that sometimes I don't like. I have to tell him some stuff that sometimes he doesn't like. And when I father and son at that point, we're partners. You know what I'm saying? So, but we have to keep that transparency so tension doesn't build up, our animosity doesn't build up. Like, you get to that point, and that's one of the biggest things. If you get to that point, it becomes negative and a toxic relationship, right? So you're gonna have to do that with contractors. You're gonna have to do that with potential sellers. You're gonna have to do that with partners. Whatever you do, like do what you say you're gonna do.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because for me that was a hard point to learn about being transparent because I always put my ego in first where I would be like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I like whenever someone gives me a test, I'm like, I could definitely do it." If you told me, "Hey, build a chimney," right? I don't know how to build a chimney. I'll figure it out, but it'll look the sloppiest like chimney you've ever seen. I'm like, and I back then I would probably be like, like I try to like, lie a little bit, like, like a little white lies, like, yeah, it's the weather, it does that or whatever. I'll make
Mm-mm.
excuses. And then I kind of learned from my property manager in New Jersey. She was like, she was about to quit on me. She was like, Fabian, holy crap, you're not telling me anything. Uh,
Mm.
whatever. And like this renter, this tenant, they're being awful. Like, I don't know. This can't be on my name. I'm like, listen, all right, I'll come out. All right, shit. What I mean? I was trying to hold it in because I was like,
Oh,
most of the information that I wanted to not say, I was like, I kept it in because it was one of those things where you don't want to say because you feel like you want other people to look different onto you, right? They're not your mom, they're not your dad. So you want them to look like, hey, this person's probably smart. You want to look like the smart person in front of people. But
right.
and then she told me like, hey, if you tell me the truth, if you just be transparent with me, we can work together. And I told her
Right.
everything. She's like, oh my God, Faven, now I really want to work with you. I'm like, all right. And
Yeah.
now we've been cruising, right? Because I just told her like, hey, listen, I like we got the flooring done or whatever. I'm like, send someone else there because I am just to check on it because I kind of made some small mistakes or whatever. Just go check on it, just to make sure it doesn't hurt my feelings anymore. Because I've been told my whole life like you can be wrong, you can be whatever. So again, transparency, like you said, is probably like one of the biggest things, and like just telling the truth because you're too much brain matter is taking place while you're trying to keep it away. Like, oh, just hide it in, don't tell them. You're trying to figure out ways to not tell them when you can just tell them and be like, and just cut the string early whenever before it like grows too far, I guess. And you don't want it to grow
Right.
too far.
Yeah. And
Uh,
this is, as far as uh, my job is, it's a really small field, and real estate is a really small field. And the last thing you want to do is, have that reputation of somebody who isn't quite honest or isn't quite transparent, um, about things. That can ruin things the fastest. So it's people talk, right? This is a small circle, so you don't want to get that reputation.
oh yeah, and then you start building your bullshit detector as well. Like you just
Right.
sit there, you're like, oh, this person just talking about themselves. They probably don't even own real estate. Like, what's going on with them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm over here like, oh man. Like now I know how other people felt whenever I was starting out, and I was like, "Oh, look, you can do this with your, uh, what is it? It's like whenever you sell a property with taxes or whatever. I forget it. I used to say it all the time.
Mm-mm.
What is that? What is that? What is that thing called? Where you can't get taxed whenever you sell a property. I
Oh,
forgot
the
what.
1031
Yeah,
exchange.
1031 exchange. Yeah, I used to say that
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
time. I like, oh, you guys didn't know this. Try to act smart in front of people like 4 years ago. And I
yeah.
was like, you know what? Let me just be honest. Be like, hey, these are some of the mistakes I'm making. Can you guys help me out? And they'll like,
Right.
yeah, yeah, do this, right? And now I'm looking at people like, oh, wait, this person doesn't know. And I'll be like, listen here, buddy. It's okay. Okay. It's okay. I know you don't own real estate. I'll help you out, right? Here, you can do this, you
Yeah.
can do that. You can read this, read that. And they're like, oh my God, thank you. Because I felt weird that I'm the only one that doesn't own real estate here. I'm like, it's okay. I was in the same bubble. And yeah,
Right.
people will look shit on people will shit on you for not owning real estate, but at the end of the day, like you're still starting out. So I get a lot of people now from the round table, right? They'll be like, "Oh my God, Faven, just because I got here, now I'm closing on deals, closing on houses." I'm like, dude, that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
Like they met real estate agents there, they met property managers, they met everybody there that need to close, right? I'm just giving that little nudge, right? Like, go ahead, just
Right.
take that, right? Because I didn't get that. What I did get
Mm-mm.
was people. I just been annoying, so I would just go up to people be like, "Hey, teach me what you know." They're like, "Oh, I can't. I don't have time anymore." I'm like, "All right." Next day, "Hey, are you busy today?" They're like, "Yeah, I'm busy today." A week later, "Hey, are you busy today?" "Yeah, I am." 3 weeks later, "Hey, where are you heading out to?" "Oh, I'm going to my one of my property sites. Can I come to you there?" They're like, "Yeah, but you're not. We can't talk." I'm like, "All right." Just staring at them. They're like, "You're being so weird." I'm like, "Just come over here." I'm like, "All right." Ask them these questions, whatever, and they got to talk about themselves, and they're like, "Oh, I kind of actually like you. Okay, cool. Now I can teach you a bunch of real estate stuff." That's all you have to do.
Right.
Like at the end of the day, like there's a property that I'm closing on tomorrow, actually.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and that one I was being really annoying with the wholesaler. I was like, "Hey, I need a deal. I need a deal. I need a deal," and they're like,
Mm-mm.
"Oh my God." I don't I hit you up first because you're the only person that came to my mind every time. So that's what I kind of recommend to people. Like just be an annoying person at first, and then once
Yeah.
you get there, then it's just you're just cruising afterwards. You're actually in their zone, right? In their circle. So you're chilling after that. Um and what was that like when do you ever see yourself selling all your properties, or are you more of a long-term investor?
Oh, I'm a long term, for sure. I mean, cash flow is probably the main priority or the top goal. Give me a second here because my little stand broke, so I'm gonna have to figure something out.
No, you're good.
Adapt and overcome, right?
Oh
So,
yeah.
okay. Um, so yeah, cash flow is what I want. All right. So enough again to have that option to say, okay, um, I need to step away from my job, or maybe I want to retire early at 50. I can go ahead and do it. But I also like to. It's kind of funny. I've heard a lot of the Dave Ramsey versus Grant Cardone lately. Um, I tend to be personal life, Dave Ramsey, business life, Grant Cardone. Like there's those are the two avenues I go in personal and business. But I do eventually want to pay off all of my properties. Um, right now, it's just a hustle game. So, like, if we flip a property, a wholesale a property, again, we're going to put that in to scaling. But at some point, um, once we reach some of our goals as far as money in the bank, we're just going to start paying down properties until we pay them completely off, and that'll be nice because that'll just be pure cash flow. The highest amount of cash flow you can get in a property, and that's going to be. I'm looking forward to that time.
Oh yeah, I can see that. And with the Dave Ramsey and like the Grant Cardone and Robert Kiyosaki, I don't like when people are like, oh, you got to be one person or the other. I just say like, whoever you see, right? You just take little bits from them, what you want,
Right.
and then just apply that to your life because you want to be that unique person. You don't want to copycat them. Um,
Right.
for example, like there's probably like uh, you know, like someone like Thomas Edison, right? He would have a bunch of who's, right? he didn't really come up with a bunch of inventions. He just like put patents on his name and was like, hey, look, I made the light bulb, right? And people
Right.
were like, oh my God, like, yeah, he made the light bulb, but he had, Tesla or whatever on his team and they all work for him. So like at the end of the day, it's like that's what I want to take, not the idea of like, hey, maybe he was probably like a dickhead to his employees, but like let
Mhm.
me let me take that idea of like hiring people out just to make my life easier. So those are
Yeah.
some things that I kind of intake from like whether it's Dave Ramsey of like being frugal, Robert Kiyosaki and just investing into real estate, and like Grant Cardone's like 10x, like all that. I'm like, here, yeah, let me grab that. But I don't want to be a copycat of that person because I feel like I'll
Right.
go insane if I did that.
Right. Like if I took the Dave Ramsey approach to business, I'd be like 80 and on one more property. That's not gonna work.
Yeah. And
Um,
he had his own trauma of like getting maybe like people are like, how does he think like that? Well, you should be in his shoes and see what he's seen. And
right.
that's what's working with him. But you're different because you have a whole different POV compared to and Grant Cardone, different point of view as well. He's in a different level. Robert
Yeah.
Kiyosaki, different level, right? Man lost $100 million just from letting someone else take it, right? And he's like, oh
Right.
wow. I like if I lost $100 million today, I'd be like, oh my God.
Right. Right.
I probably need a nap. Like
Yeah.
I can't I can't sit around. I mean I don't know. I'd probably be like dead for another like couple weeks because that's $100 million.
Right.
And
But yeah, the thing is they both have incomes, right? They both have
yeah,
well established businesses, so they can they can invest way more than we can. Because I'm working off what my business generates as far as real estate, and my personal income allows me to have a relationship with banks to borrow money. So I understand that, right? So the 9 to 5 is good for that. So the more money I can show, um, as opposed to debt I have, always works better and in my favor. So it's in my favor to keep that like as low as possible. So like car payments, credit card debt, all that kind of stuff. Like, trying to get this house paid off as fast as possible. Um, Things like that are things I want to do in my personal life. And then that allows my business to scale that much faster. So that's just kind of my mindset. Uh, and it's been working since, again, this is more recent, like early 30s was not operating like this at all. So
yeah, and I like to counter that because I'm kind of like in between with that, like either paying off all my houses or leveraging everything, right? And the whole leveraging everything, people see it as like, oh, like money, it's always printable, right? Money's always gonna go up. You should use the full amount. Like if you're trying to juice out everything, right? Every single cent that you can get from a property, leveraging is probably the way. But if you're just trying to like have peace of mind, have like long-term investments going on, making sure that like your kids don't destroy your whole like your foundation, right? Like then I would say going with like paying off all your property is a good idea. um, a lot of people that I know that big time investors, like people that buy like 30 unit plus, people that buy storage units, people that own car washes, whatever, they all mostly pay off their houses, right? Because they built that foundation and then they leverage a lot of things towards their other business, such as their car washes, their um dry cleaners or whatever, right? That's what they do. But before all that, they built the foundation with paying off their fourplex, paying off their single families, and now they're cruising. Everything else just
right.
icing on the cake. It's all just gravy at the end.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and for you, like, what is probably like the biggest fear decision that you made, and you kind of got the best outcome out of that?
The biggest fear decision. Um,
Yeah, where like you were like, I'm so scared of it, I'm so scared, but then you did it, and then you're like, oh my God, thank God I did it.
Let me think. It was probably the first cash out refi we took on our house to take equity out, tax free money, right? And then we bought a property, and it was a mobile home. And um, we had no clue about how to repair mobile homes. We knew it was different, but um, it's the first time I had done a cash out. It's the first time I had just said, hey, we're going to set up this, gather as much information as we know, and set up a repair budget. We set up an overage, but we didn't know concretely or with experience how much over it would be. We just went for it. And it turned out really good. So that was like, I'm trying to think of anything else. As far as real estate, yeah, I think that was it. I think so. Everything else was being Alexa's going off back there. Sorry. I guess I
There you
called
go.
Alexa. I think everything else has been pretty easy. And I've been pretty confident in. When COVID took place, we had a schedule where we had 5 days on, 5 days off. So literally on my 5 days off, I was on a Zoom meeting for the North Carolina. It used to be TRIA, Triangle Real Estate Association, but now it's NCREA, North Carolina Real Estate Association. Literally every day for a year, I was on those meetings. So as far as information, I was very, very comfortable, like going into a deal. Or I had sources to call. So I don't think I've had anything that's been too uncomfortable. We'll see what happens with this mobile home park. I'm very nervous about that. And there's a lot of work to do, but we'll see what happens with more results to come on that. So,
Oh yeah, you'll be good. Because I see in a lot of investors, how a lot of people they call it soldier eyes for a bunch of soldiers or whatever. They come back from war and they look deadly or whatever. I see it in a lot of investors. They're like, yeah, I done it before. I can do it again. Like I see that in you where like you can, even if like you probably don't have, failure is not an option for you again, right? So
right.
you're probably going to get it done and it's going to be successful for you. And then you're going to be grateful that you did it. But then again, you're going to have another mountain that you're going to have to climb over. You're like, oh, look, I got a 64 unit apartment complex that I got to close on. Right. Those are the struggles that you're having, right? That's it. And those are
Right.
good. Uh, for the regular normie, they're like, oh man, he's doing a lot of things. He's not going to be that successful, but one day you're going to be like, your kids are driving Lamborghinis and you're like, I built this, right?
Yeah.
And what is probably like one of the most important lesson that you learned in like 2022?
In 2022, so many lessons in the past few years. I would say the power of words. Or it's close. It's close. Or the book called The One Thing, like Focus. I was doing a lot of which one? I have to choose one. I would say the power of words, like doing affirmations every morning. Um, it seemed really silly at first. And getting around the right circle and people who speak life into you, and like I call it the 100%ers, like the people who give 100%. It doesn't have to be real estate, but get around somebody who gives 100% in what they do. Like the way they talk, the way they speak to you about what you're doing and like affirm you and assure you, that's amazing. And when you're down, or you'll just be walking and like it'll pop in your head or somebody will say something that's discouraging, or maybe, sorry, they're discouraged. And like these affirmations come back and then you affirm them, that's the most amazing part of those words, that it fills you with confidence. It takes you through um, those struggle points and you just shrug it off. You're like, I can figure this out. This is my goal. This is who I am. It just really forces you to grow. And changes the whole programming of your brain.
Oh yeah, I like that. I like that lesson, the way you speak and everything, because I know me being in the military, people are always negative here. I don't know why. Well, I know why, and it's contagious as well. Uh, it builds bad leadership as well because the negativity. It's like building Voldemort, right? From Harry Potter.
Right.
So it's like it's just not. It doesn't have love. At the end of the day, I'm like, why are people like this? I don't know, but
Uh-uh.
uh, I try to kind of put a shield up, right? I kind of read it in like the Energy Bus. Have you read that book?
I have not.
It's a really good book. I'll recommend it for everybody that's like want to be optimistic and like have enthusiasm and whatever. This book it kind of showed like you need to put up your shield in a way, and the shield allows you to basically be like, hey, your negativity, keep that to yourself. I'm just looking for people. I want to give positivity so that other people will give me positivity back, and that's what I've kind of done in the past and in the military itself, and it helps out a lot, right? Because a lot of people they can moan about, oh, we're doing PT in the morning, oh my god, motor pool again. I'm like, hey, like they're like, I'm like, hey, it's not that big of a deal, right? At least you're not deployed. At least see, I like to tell people like, look in the past 5 years, look at how far you come, right?
Right.
Like 5 years ago, I was still like working at that bakery, hating my life. I was like, oh man, I'm like, oh, I wish I could do real estate. Oh, I can never do real estate. I don't got money. Oh, all these people are better than me. And then I was like, you know what? Let me put my ego down. Let me go ahead and actually go do it. And then 5 years later, got a couple properties, met a lot of people, started a bunch of stuff, started this podcast. I was like, hey, I want to get it done, right? And I kind of blocked off all the negative people away. It's not really like, hey, getting rid of them. It's just like spending less time with them. And if you spend less time with them, they're still in your life because everyone's going to be in your life. You're like a cell. You're touching everybody. You're
Right.
shaking hands with everybody. You're kissing babies, whatever. And the more people that you meet or whatever, they're gonna. I always tell people like people tell me like, hey, Fabian, how do you deal with these negative people? I'm like, just don't talk to them, right? They'll watch you, right? They still want to be with you. It's that they want the old version of you. They don't like that you changed. And I like that
Mhm.
I changed, right? It's not my fault that I changed and you didn't. But at the end of the day, like I'm gonna keep changing for the better version I want to become. I know I'm 20. I'm not doing 20-year-old things, right? A 20-year-old is probably getting drunk, partying, probably at the Super Bowl right now, just partying, like, but me, I'm like, hey, I gotta get this work done. And it's not work, right? It's my life. I love it. I like doing it.
Right.
And it's what I want to do. And let's say it's just shoveling, if I'm shoveling shit, right? I'm gonna be like, oh, let me figure out how I can make this gameable, right? If I can make this fun, if I can make this optimistic, let's see what I can do with this, right? It doesn't have to be, crappy your whole life. You can make
Right.
things better for yourself if you just change your mindset about things. Like, hey, look how far you come. And if you go back to rock bottom, guess what? You just think optimistically. There's nowhere else going other than up, right?
Right.
You if you're homeless, good. Now that you know where rock bottom's at, anything that you do from then on is just a plus one. So I'm like, hey, kudos to people that have that optimistic mindset as well. And we can now move on to the ending questions here. So if you can go
Okay.
back in time and ask your younger self something, let's say age 18, right? Because that's where a lot of people they become an adult legally.
Mhm.
And for you, what would you tell your younger self? He's listening to you. He's like, hey, what's up, James? What would you tell him?
Ooh, what would I tell him? I probably tell him, um, that's a good question. I say take the risk. Um, there were a lot of opportunities I had earlier on. Uh, and I try not to focus on the past anymore. I've learned be in the present, focus on the future. There's lessons, unless you're like, counting your blessings. You count your blessings, but I was in California, where I started my aviation air traffic control career on the civilian side. And it was 2008, 2009, bottom of the market. There was this little 720 square foot house in Alameda, California, and it was $275,000. And I passed barely got approved for it, but I did. And, I was getting all my stuff together to close and I backed out. I was like, I'm not paying $275,000 for this little shack. Where in South Carolina, I could, buy a mansion at that time, for 275. Um, I didn't. I my gut was telling me, go ahead, it'll be a good thing. You know, that same house is probably worth like $700,000 today. But that taught me a valuable lesson too, you know, as far as when to buy, location, location, location. There are a lot of lessons in uh, that me passing that deal. Um, so yeah, there was a couple of those situations where I probably could have pulled the trigger on something, and I didn't because I was just kind of fearful of the what if. Um, you know, so I just say, hey, you know, if you find a deal and you know it's good and the numbers look good and you can afford it, you know, go ahead and make the deal, you know.
Oh, I like that. Even though you didn't get that house and you probably could have made 500K out of it. Um,
Yeah,
it's at the end of the day, it's like you live and you learn, right? Will you get
right.
those opportunities again? Yeah, probably. If you
Yeah.
just,
Oh yeah.
it'll come, right? A lot of the investors that I know that, like now, you probably know, like a bunch of investors, they haven't even tasted what 2008 tastes like, right? They
Right.
probably just worked through it. Um, but a bunch of investors during 2008, during the dot-com bubble, during all that, they're like, hey, I know what a true valuable house looks like. I know what a true deal looks like. I'm like, hey, like me as a young guy, I'm like, oh, I wish I was, during that time. Which I mean, when I was 14, I couldn't buy a house in 2008, right? So, if I could, I would. Um, but if I for from the next, I'm hoping, right, for the next, whatever will come that kind of collapses the economy, and I'm like, oh, so this is what it looks like.
Right.
Okay, okay.
And
And then
and
I make my
I'm
decisions after that.
oh yeah, yeah. And I'm very um stringent on like the deals that we do make. My partner and I are. So we probably give away a couple of deals that we could have closed on, but we've been in 2008 and we're seeing what, you know, portfolios, people just selling them off because they were good deals at the time and they turned into bad deals because they were over leveraged, or what being over leveraged looks like when things like that happen. So um, that's why we won't take, like, we'll take a good amount of money out to reinvest. We're not taking all of it out because stuff happens. Rents go down, taxes go up, things happen. So we want to make sure we have that cash flow to where whatever happens, like we're good. And we have that opportunity to do so and still scale like at a good rate. So, you know, if you have the opportunity to, I just say find that balance. That's not for everybody. Some people are going to be like, take every last penny out. It just depends on how you want to look at it, you know?
Yeah. And what another question would be, what question would you like to ask your future self?
Ooh, a question would I like to ask my future self? Um, did you give it your all? Did you give it your all? Like whatever you had going on, um, from here on, like I just want to make sure that I give my all in whatever I do. And like I said, focus on those couple of things, get where I want to be, and then move to the next one and move to the next one. Um, as far as family goes, you know, want to make sure everybody's good. I love as hard as I can and be as good as I can and give as much as I can, not only my family, but like the local community. Just affect change in some kind of way. That's a big thing to me too. So, of course, that goes into real estate, but when it comes to things like community service, giving, you know, I want to make sure that I impact lives probably more than anything. Make somebody's life, somebody stay better if and when I can.
Yeah, I like that. Especially about like, if you can do more, because I know like pain is temporary and pain is forgettable. So like nobody remembers that, you probably forgot that you did a 12-mile ruck like 20 or 30 years ago, right? You you probably remember, like if you do remember, you're like, oh yeah, I done it. But you probably don't remember the pain. And nobody
Right.
remembers the pain. Nobody ever gets PTSD from like, oh yeah, my back was aching. Like, no. If you're building a house, right, you don't remember, oh, like you spent 8 hours doing the flooring, or you spent like 7 hours painting, and it just like mind frustrating. You won't remember that 10 years down the line. What you will remember is that you done it, you did it. And that's why I kind of tell people like, hey, just do things that are painful, that are scary, that are just like overall just a headache in a way. Because guess what? 10 years from now, you're gonna be like, oh, I got that medal, I got that trophy, I won that wrestling. Like wrestlers, especially, they win championships, but they don't remember like, oh yeah, they had to run like miles and miles, wrestle in heat, throw up, cut their weight. They don't remember all that. All they do remember is, hey, I won, I got a championship trophy out of that. And
Right.
that's why I keep telling people like, hey, sooner or later, like you don't really gotta focus on the pain. Just do it. Just do it. And like you said, for me, I kind of overdo it. I kind of burn myself out. I'll be honest because I'm like, hey, every hour has a purpose. Every second has a purpose. If I don't do that, I'm I'm telling my older self, my future self, like a big fuck you, right? He's probably looking down. It's like, what are you doing? You should probably be doing more, do more, read more, uh, look up, analyze more real estate. Don't even talk to people. Just do this, right? I'm like, shit. Okay, why not? All right, knock it off. And then I burn myself out and I'm like, oh man. But months or weeks later, I'm like, I don't remember that. I just remember that I did make a spreadsheet. I did make a website. I did make a podcast. Like that's all I remember. And is there a quote that you live by specifically, James?
Um, Before we get there, I'll say that, and this is just some advice because it had to be given to me
Yeah.
because I come from that same background of the work, 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 work. You know, celebrate your wins. Like it doesn't matter how small it is. If you set a milestone or a big goal and you get there, setting up this podcast and celebrate it. Like it doesn't have to be the grand elaborate thing. I don't care if it's a dinner, and that gives you that break. Like I don't know if you do that already, but if you don't, start celebrating those wins. You know, treat yourself.
You
Treat
know, it's funny.
yourself.
You're not the first person that said that to me. And I'm like, I do. I don't know. I forget if I do treat myself. I'm like, how am I supposed to treat like? It's so weird. I'm like, I don't find fun in like regular people fun things, right? A lot of people they go on roller coasters to have fun. They hang around with like friends to have fun. They play video games. They do whatever. I'm like, I don't know. I kind of want to go back to work and like do all this stuff. Like, oh yes, I got a deal. Cool. Now, like after tomorrow's closing, I'm probably just gonna be like, hey, thank you, Ashish. Now I'm gonna go and that's a lawyer. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and walk to the property, look at it, call some contractors or whatever. Probably post it on Facebook, me smiling, and then put it down and be like, yay, right? Because people like to see that. Especially my family members are like, yeah, good job on that. I'm like, thank you. And then I'm like, okay, let me let me just keep working, right? People see I like to show like I always say Instagram and everything is like all brain rot because it's just people wins. It's never like
Right.
someone posting their losses or whatever. But they don't see that. Nobody sees that you're spending, 12 hours like working on one thing that you don't even know if it's gonna go up or down, right? Like I give kudos to like computer software engineers, right? Because they spend like hours and hours just to figure out what is wrong with the code itself, like what line is wrong. And once they figure it out, they're like, oh my God, I gotta do the whole thing again. I'm like, that's a pain, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
people don't speak about that. Like your house can, like you're trying to figure out where to put stuff. You broke something, or like you're doing like flooring, and then you figured out that oh, it's not a quarter. It's not three quarters of an eighth from the wall, and you're like, God, I messed everything up. Now you got to do the whole thing again. You spent that whole time, but it's learn as you go. That's what I say.
Mhm.
And I again, I don't know how to celebrate. If you would recommend anything, just let me know. Like because I'm like I'm over here thinking, man, there's nothing. And I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do any of that stuff either. So I'm like, I'm a boring person. I tell people I'm the most boring person you'll ever meet. Because we can have great conversations, but you will never see me be a partier. And if you do, it's probably because I don't know, something happened. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm the same way now. In my 20s, I can't speak to that, but um, I would say for me, I'm a travel guy. Like the beach is my kind of therapeutic, happy place. Going to places like Washington D.C. and walking the monuments and National Mall. Went to the Grand Canyon a couple of years ago. That was nice. So whatever, and it might take some, some research to see. Okay, I might want to check this out. But whatever brings you happiness, like that's what brings me happiness. So um, sometimes I was literally at the Polo Outlet in Savannah. And I was like, I'm not going to buy anything. I don't need to spend this money. And my fiance was like, when you close on this mobile home, you get it up and running. We're going to the Polo Outlet, and you're gonna get a jacket you were looking at. Like it's not the biggest thing. I don't need the biggest thing, but like it's just something that's like get something to say, hey, it can be whatever. It could be a new real estate polo. I don't know. It could be tickets to the Bigger Pocket. I'm going to Bigger Pockets convention. I don't know. Something that just rewards yourself and makes you happy. So
You know what? I'll try that traveling thing because a lot of some of my friends oh we made a decision like in June or whatever. We'll go to Colombia, and I told them no, I gotta like purchase these properties. I gotta make my I gotta buy like at least two properties this year. I'm halfway there, right? So all I gotta do is probably buy one more and I'll probably be there. And yeah, I'll treat myself to going there. So
yeah,
yeah, I like that idea.
yeah.
Um, and oh, what books? Oh yeah, I no. Before the books, the quote part. What quote do you live by?
So uh, the biggest one I think is trust in the Lord with all that heart and lean not into your own understanding, and always acknowledge Him and He'll direct your path. Like that's 6, 7 year old James Clark. Uh, just it's always been that way. So um, there's a standard I want to live by. There's a way I want to love people. So I think that's an outlet for finances. It talks about investing. It talks about how to live your life in a very common sense and practical way. So for me, I think, I'm a vessel here temporarily. It's a whole nother afterlife, but while I'm here, just try to love people and live the best life I can. So
Yeah, I agree with that because I'm also like a believer in God as well. And I always tell people, some people might find this like offensive or whatever, but I say like God is probably watching us like through his own TV. And he's like, huh, flip the channel, flip the channel. He's like, oh, I wonder what Fabian's doing. Oh, look, he's oh shoot, he's doing this. Oh, I didn't like I know what's his name, David Goggins. He's like, when I die, I want to make sure whenever I see God, like he's like, oh my God, you went off the script, right? You're not supposed you weren't
yeah,
even supposed to be a Navy SEAL. You weren't supposed to be a guy that's running 100 miles. Like you were supposed to be this guy that only kills cockroaches. What you did way better than I thought. So for
yeah,
me, I'm like, hey God, listen, I'm doing what I have to do. I'm following my dream. Let me do what I'm doing. He's like, and he's interested in what he's watching, and he'll like sprinkle a little luck on you because people that do things they get lucky. So
yeah,
people are like, oh, you're so lucky all the time. I'm like, no, I'm just doing the things, and God's just like watching me. He's like, hey, he wants to watch more, so he sprinkled some fairy dust on
yeah.
me, and it's like, oh,
Right.
look,
It's 100% about action. Like even
yeah,
if you know it's all about action. Even if you don't, like, there are principles to life. That's what you kind of learn. And if you follow these principles, you will get these results. You know what I'm saying? Like, he leaves it up to us. Like, there are certain business principles. And if you follow the principles, you get the results. So now, like you said, you get the sprinkles in there too. But um, yeah, it's all about action. I don't really want to be a talker. I don't want to be a person who just says stuff or um, I want to be an action taker, someone who, you know, can leave a legacy, add value, and hopefully, people see a light, not from me, but from something deeper. So, but
oh
yeah,
yeah, you kind of are like an inspiration right now, James. Like
no, thank you.
people see you, they're like, oh, anybody like you're like an older age and you're still doing it, you're still grinding it out. You're like, hey, one day I'm gonna get that private plane and like fly everywhere that I want. I see that.
Yeah,
And what are some books that you would recommend for someone that's actually getting started in this, whether it's financial, real estate, personal development? What are some books that you would recommend that helped you and some parts of your life?
So we're gonna, of course, as we mentioned before, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Dave Ramsey Total Money Makeover. Like that was the one. That was the one I read, and I was like, I need to get my life in check. Now you don't have to agree with all his principles. I'm not going, but I actually have read that book like 2, 3, 4 times because it kind of resets my mind, right? Like in air traffic, any safety related profession, you hear the same things over and over. It's annual stuff you have to do, quarter, because it just refreshes your mind. It keeps that at the front of your mind. So that's one I've read a couple times. Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins. You know, we mentioned him before. Just that 100% mindset, right? Like when I get something, I'm gonna go highest and best. You know, pain is temporary. It's not your limit. You can always push a little bit further. Um, let's see. The One Thing was a really good one, and I'm reading Miracle Morning right now to kind of get my morning, refine my morning routine again with my schedule. It's crazy. I I was trying to do like the 5 o'clock thing, but if you get off at 12 o'clock a.m., it's hard to wake up. So I have to adjust that, but I still want to have that same routine, no matter how much the time changes, as
Oh
much as
yeah.
possible. So yeah.
And for the routine part, I always tell people just instead of having an alarm clock to wake up, put an alarm clock to go to sleep. Uh, that always helped me out. Like, hey, 10 o'clock, gotta go to bed. Sorry, bud.
Yeah,
Can't
true.
you can't be watching YouTube videos. You can't be watching the Super Bowl. Go to bed. All right, it's time.
Yeah,
You can figure out 8 hours later. Um,
definitely.
and those are some good books. I want to add some so that the people can listen. Probably would be The Untethered Soul, just for self improvement. That book kind of like it's a crazy book, I'll say. It's for like the roommates in your head. Not to go crazy over it, but like I would say the only best friend that you probably have in the world is probably yourself. Uh, because if you're not comfortable with yourself, how are you going to be comfortable with other people?
Mhm.
So that one, and for financials, I would say every single book about from Nassim Taleb. Uh, he's a very interesting person with his finances, and he speaks really, 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 especially about what is that one called? It's Skin in the Game or something like that, or Anti Fragile. Those are some really good books from him that I would recommend.
Okay.
Uh, though, and probably like again, The Third Door. That one, like the audiobook for that one is really good. So I would get that one because
Okay.
it's those are some like I have I'm more of a negative person towards books. Like, oh, this book is butt. This book is trash. Oh, this book's pretty good. I like it. Right. Um, like I think I read Robert Kiyosaki's book and I kind of ended halfway. I'm like I get the gist of it, and real estate cool. Like the first like two chapters, like oh liability versus assets, I get it, and I'm like oh I should probably finish the book, but I never got the time to do it. So, but
Okay.
other books that I hop on, like the $100 Million Offer by Alex Ramosi. Yeah, you need to get David Goggins' new book. It's really good. He talks
Okay.
about there was one point in the book where he was running 100. He calls it the Superman. Like you become Superman by he has like this mindset, right? Like him and this jogger, or whatever, like they were running a marathon, and he was saying that David Goggins, yeah, he was at that pace, he looked a little tired, you know, and then he went to the porta potty and he came out, not like Superman. He goes in a telephone booth and he comes out. He's like, "Oh, I'm Superman, right? Clark Kent to Superman." He comes out and he's like, "I'm Goggins. I'm not David Goggins. I'm Goggins, right?" And he just zooms past the other guy. He's like, "Bro, what the hell? Like, where was this before?" Like, no, he had a mental shift of saying like, "I'm not that person. I am a different human being," and that kind of correlates with the untethered soul and everything like that because it always talks about the people that you have in your head with Stephen Pressfield's Resistance, right? You read Stephen Pressfield's book, James?
I'm not.
It's the Resistance, like 60 pages, and it talks about. I mean, it's called the the art of. It's called the War of Art. It's not the Art of War. It's kind of
Okay.
like it's kind of like it's an oxymoron or whatever, but like basically saying that for an artist, right? So for someone that wants to do things, business or creativity, you're always fighting against this. People call it the devil. I know Napoleon Hill, he called it uh outwitting the devil. But Stephen Pressfield, he calls it the resistance, basically saying like, hey, I need to start writing this book, right? But this being in my head, it's like, oh wait, you got to go eat first. Oh wait, you got to go walk the dog, or you got to go
Mhm.
do. Okay, let me go do that. Or you have a meetup to go to, but you're in bed and you're like, I got to go to sleep. Or you got to watch this show. You kind of want to finish the show. You want to binge on the show because it's so good. Like there's small things that resistance takes so many forms, like the devil, right? It takes a form of a human being, it takes a form uh of what you're enjoying, dopamine, whatever. And it's like, hey, just take this, take that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do things that are going to help you out in the future. Just
Right.
just relax, you know what I mean? Go to sleep, you know. It's like the sirens at the end of the day. You want to cover your ears so you don't hear them. I can go on and on with books, right? I'm a book geek as well, but that comes from me saying a bunch of no's to a bunch of books too. You get that point where you're like, oh, man, this author just sucks, right? Usually in a
Mhm.
book, I'm always arguing with the author, like, why do you say this? It doesn't make sense. Like if you, I always like, like in my sister's house. Uh, I put all my books there because I don't have storage for myself. So every time I go back to Jersey, I get a couple books that I'll ship books over there. I'll get them and I'll read them. And I go back and I'll put them back. And she'll go through them. She's like, "Why are you cursing at this person?" I'm like, because it didn't make sense. You know what I mean? I don't like what he said. It just like like sometimes, yeah. I'm like, but it's my book though, so I get to do whatever I want. I bought it for $15. I get to write
Right.
whatever I want in it. So if you want to read it, you get to read what I wrote in it too. Uh, and from second to last question here, um, is there anything that you would like to tell your mother or father if they are listening to this?
Oh man. Whew. Just I honor them, you know. Man, like they've been such an inspiration. They worked their butts off to lay a foundation for my sister and I. So I'm very grateful that to have both of them in my life. Obviously, to have the business aspect of it is great also, and for their support. They're always there for me. So I won't take that for granted at all. So I really, really have the highest respect and honor for them.
Oh man, that's very heartful. And finally, how can people reach out to you, and what value can us and we or the people that are listening give back to you?
So you can reach out to me by cell. My phone number is 910-354-5811. Again, that's 910-354-5811. I'll leave it just like my voicemail, say it twice. Or by email at invest, the at symbol, the letter J, the word and the letter J, Carolina.com. That's invest at symbol J and J Carolina.com. Um, you just want to just have a conversation. Like I love having conversations. You just want to talk about real estate. Again, it just gets the wheels turning. You can probably give me some insight from a different perspective that might be a blind spot for me. If you're new, I love to help. So just give me a call or a ring. If I don't know the answer, I'll try to find the answer. I do have resources I can reach out to, and um, yeah, I have an accountability group, a small one on Fridays. So if you want to jump in on that, we meet at 7 p.m. and it's just a Zoom, and we sit there and set 3 or 4 goals for the week, and then we meet every Friday. And if we didn't meet them, we ask why, and then we make set goals for the next week. So
I like that. I like that. And hopefully people take the opportunity to message you because again, guys, James is one of the best guys that I've met. He is a totally chill guy and he knows a lot of information that kind of helped me out. And again, he's an old timer too. So you get a lot of information on just from that. And again, James, thank you for coming on to the podcast. I and the people probably listening, we really did enjoy you having here.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
No problem.